Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Amud Yomi Shir. We are with the Dirsha cycle, and we are in Daf Chof Amud Aleph, although right now we are still in the Mishnah, Yutes Amud Beis. Yutes Amud Beis in the bottom of the page, and the Shir is in Mishnah. And Soilin. This Mishnah, the last Mishnah of our Perek, also discusses the idea of not starting certain things before Shabbos because of something that may happen on Shabbos. This is about Friday afternoon, which follows the chronology of the Masechta. First we'll learn about Friday afternoon, then about Shabbos, etc. Now, this Mishnah talks about a whole group of things again that Beis Hillel do agree to. This is agreed by both Bisham and Beis Hillel as opposed to previous Mishnahs. And the Mishnah goes as follows. This Mishnah will discuss, as opposed to other things before, it discusses cooking. As we all know, we all have a blech at home or a hot plate. We all have this issue with not just leaving things to cook, right? Uncooked or half-cooked things before Shabbos can't just cook away as Shabbos comes into Shabbos, right? There's a problem of things being cooked on Shabbos. And we will see the reason today. We'll see the reason today. And I already say the reason now, so our Mishnah reading will be easier. The simple reason is that if somebody has fire, remember the days when fire was used, yeah? Even today, many people have stovetop gas with fire. So now if you have fire and you are concerned that things won't be ready on time, that the food won't be properly cooked on time for the meal, you may come to play around and basically increase the fire. Back then, you would stoke the fire with a stick. Today, you may change the setting a little bit, play with a knob. And that's why, in general, they have to make some kind of simon. You have to do grufa or ktuma, they used to do then. Nowadays, we cover it or use a hot plate. This is, in general, the idea. There's a concern you may come to be over and have aura. Even if you're not over in bishul, because maybe it's already half cooked and enough cooked, there's still a concern you're just increasing fire, which by itself is a problem of mavio, of lighting. So because of that, says the Mishnah, Ein soilin boso botzalu beitza, ela kadesh yitzolim mivoid yoim. One is not allowed to roast meat, onion, or beitza that is an egg, only or unless they were already cooked or roasted to a certain point before Shabbos. Only if it's already cooked before Shabbos or roasted up to a certain point, only then you're allowed to leave it there on Shabbos to continue to roast. But if you didn't reach that point of whatever the point is, we'll see in the Gemara, there's always a concern that you may come to stoke the fire to make sure that it gets cooked properly. This is what we say in the Mishnah. Now, why did we choose boso botzelu beitza? Why dafka meat, onion, and beitza, an egg? Any other food is the same. So the Tiferes Yisrael explains because there are a few answers. The one answer I saw today, Tiferes Yisrael, he says, because boso botzelu beitza may be eaten sometimes raw. You know, boso, you have carpaccio, sushi, botzel, onion, you can eat it raw, beitza, gogol mogol, or in a mousse or something. But those things, although they may be eaten raw, but because most times people eat them cooked and you want to cook it, you may come to stoke it. You may come to get nervous and try and make it hotter quicker. As opposed to fruit. Fruit, let's say you want to have cooked apples, cooked pears, it's quite common, or baked pears or cooked, yeah? Then we're not concerned and there's no chash over there. That's halacha. Because when it's fruit, you don't mind if it's not cooked. You like it cooked, but if it doesn't get cooked, pseder, nish geferlach. Yeah? That's a chidush of boso betor beitza. Continues the Mishnah. One is not allowed to put a bread into the tanur before dark. Charor is called ash cake. Yeah, that's how the Tiferes Yisrael calls it. It's a kind of cake which is usually baked on coals, a cake on coals. You're not allowed to have that before Shabbos. Again, for the same reason, if it's not properly baked, you may come to play around with the fire to cook it or bake it more. Ella, you're only allowed to leave it there when Shabbos comes in. Only if the face of it, the outside of it already became crusty. Only once it's crusty, then it's okay, because then, although it's not fully baked, you may want to bake it more. But once the crust on the outside is already done, at that point, your mind is at ease, it's at rest. You're not going to play around with it anymore. That we already know it reached the point of you being calm, your wife being calm. You're not going to start mushing with it. Rabbi Eliezer argues on the comment, says, "Kidei shikro matachton shelo." Oh, what does that mean? Well, the Gemara is going to explain the tachton. Rabbi Eliezer says you don't need or so we think now, we don't need the entire bread to be crusty all over, only the lower side. That's one way of understanding it. The Gemara will explain what it means. Yeah, but Rabbi Eliezer is not talking about all sides. One side is enough, or so we think. Continues the Mishnah, more about cooking on Friday afternoon, getting ready for Shabbos. Pesach betanu im chashecha. That is to say, Pesach is Korban Pesach. Now, let's say Pesach is on Shabbos, and our little Seder is on Shabbos. Now you're going to eat your Korban Pesach, and it's inside the Tanu. Mishalshin means you lower the Korban Pesach, was like a whole lamb on a skewer, yeah, on a spit, a big one, and you'd lower it into the Tanur, yeah. You're allowed to do that im chashecha, right before dark. What do you mean? Aren't we concerned that the people who are dealing with the Korban, which is any normal Jew, yeah, all Jews would divide to chaburos, right, groups to have the Korban Pesach together. This here, Mirza Hashem. And then what? You're allowed to lower it and start roasting it on the fire without any other prerequisites, without any other conditions. The question is why? Why aren't we concerned? It's not half cooked. It's not. It's completely raw, and yet it's okay. The question is why. But it's allowed. We're going to see why. There was a place in Beis HaMikdash called Beis HaMikdash. When you turn right, when you go up from the 15 steps and you go through the main doors, the Shah Nikanor, you turn right. One of the first rooms to the very right end of the Mikdash was Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash was like a big room. Half of it was within the Kedusha of Beis HaMikdash, the other half was outside the Kedusha, but it was all one big room. There were 4 different corners there for different needs. In the middle of the room, there was a medura. What's a medura? A bonfire. That fire was basically like the dorm of the Kohanim. The Kohanim would get very cold because, as Rashi explains, their feet have to touch the ground all the time. If the feet have to touch the ground, then they get cold. It's cold in Yerushalayim. And although the Beis HaMikdash was full of nisim, not everything there was an ace, and they would just get very cold. So every once in a while, they would go to warm themselves up, by the fire. I don't know if they had coffee or tea there or no, I don't know. But they had the warm fire over there to warm up by. So now you're allowed to have fire starting there in that Beis HaMikdash, like fire, Yoked. In Beis HaMikdash, there was allowed on Friday afternoon, even though there's a chashash that if it's not cold, if it's not hot enough, and it's just a tiny bit of fire, maybe one of the Kohanim by mistake would start stoking the fire. So we're not concerned about that, and the question is why? We're not concerned. Now, otherwise we are. As the Mishnah is going to say now, normally when it comes to heating fire, which is not cooking fire, we are concerned. As the Mishnah now continues, Daf Chof Amud Aleph, ubegvulin, what's gvulin? Outside Beis HaMikdash, kidei shetechoza'u beruboi. Oh, begvulin, which means if you're not inside Beis HaMikdash and you have fire which is not for cooking, it's what? For heating, and it's cold. Then you're not allowed to start the fire before Shabbos unless you know that the majority of the fire is already on. We're going to see opinions in the Gemara. Generally speaking, it means once you know the majority of the wood has already caught fire, then your mind is at rest. You go to shul, your wife is, doing her Kabbalah Shabbos, a magazine, whatever. Yeah, and what? And you're okay with that as long as the majority of the fire already took. Rabbi Yehuda says when it comes to pechomin, because the medura of coals are hotter. We all know that, right? From the barbecue. Once it's hot, it's hot. So pechomin, once you have a little bit of heat there, it's already enough. You don't have to make sure that the majority is on. It'll mistam go on. Yeah, sooner or later. Says the Gemara. Vikama. Fred the Gemara. Vikama means we're going now to the beginning of the Mishnah to bosel, botzel, ubeitza. What's bosel, botzel, ubeitza? Basically, all kinds of food items, even food items that be eaten raw, can't be eaten raw, all those items you cannot start frying or baking or roasting on Shabbos unless it's already partially cooked before Shabbos. The question is, how much is that partial, or maybe the whole thing has to be cooked? It's enough that on Friday afternoon, as Shabbos comes in, as maybe a wife lights the candles, it's a discussion halacha, or as whatever right before Shkia, as long as at that point it's ben dosoi. What's ben dosoi? Ben dosoi was a thief, was a highwayman, and he would always be on the run, and therefore he would never cook his meat properly. He would always eat half-baked or half-cooked meat. How much is ben dosoi? Famous big machlokes Rashi and Rambam. Rashi said the third. Yeah, let's say it reached a third of its total cooking, bishul. And according to Rambam, it's half. Yeah, let's say it has to be cooked 20 minutes, it was cooked 10 minutes, according to Rambam. And Shulchan Aruch goes with the Rambam. And most poskim go with the Rambam. If it's half-baked, once it's half-cooked, then there's no concern anymore. Then you can keep it on the fire into Shabbos. And we're not concerned you'll stoke it anymore. And this is very good in case you don't have a blech. Let's say you're stuck in the north. I'm not saying halacha l'maaseh at all now. This is the beginning of the sugya. By the way, this main part of the sugya, this is like a drop in the sea of the whole first sugya in the third parak. In the third parak, we're going to see a long and intricate sugya about this. Now we're bringing down one opinion that says, once it's third or half cooked, ben soy, no problem. You can leave it there without a blech, without grufa ktuma, no problem. It's fine. I'm not saying halacha l'maaseh. I'm saying that's what we're saying over here. Itmanami, Amar Vasi, Amar B'Yochanan, Kol Shukamachel Ben Drosoi, Ein B'Mishum Bishulei Nochrim. Oh, we see another area in halacha where bishul makes a difference is bishul nochrim. Let's say a Jew cooked the meat or any food up to Ben Drosoi, right, half or third, whatever, Rambam or Rashi, and then he took it off the fire for whichever reason. In came Tim McKenzie. Now he wants to cook it until it's fully cooked. No problem for you to eat it. Why? Because once it's half cooked, a third cooked, once it's ben soy, halachically it's called cooked. And therefore, even though later on the Jew, if it was cooked, later on came the goy, doesn't matter. The ikr cooking was done by Yid. Yeah, that's what we say. And therefore now we reflect it also in the sugya of Shabbos. Tanya, here's the famous Hanania. Hanania, a Tana called Hanania. Hanania Omer, כל שהוא כמאכל בן דרוסוי, מותר לשבת על גב קירה, ואף על פי שאין גופה כתומה. Here's מפורש. Hanania, according to the Gemara, this follows the opinion of Hanania. Hanania is going to be a big star in Perek Shlishi, and Hanania says as follows. Once an item is cooked, ben dosoi, partial cooking, what's ben dosoi really? Who cares about the robber? We're not robbers, but we too can eat it b'shas adchak. If you have no choice, like rare steak, some people like it, right? I don't know if rare steak is half or third or whatever, but yeah, it's not well cooked, but for some people it's absolutely fine. You did half cooked, so you're not so nervous anymore. Even though it's not grufa ktuma. What does it mean grufa ktuma? Grufa means if the item is not yet cooked to that level and it's Friday afternoon going into Shabbos, what do? Like we have a blech. Grufa means they would rake, R-A-K-E. They would rake the grof out the gecholim, out of the oven, maybe leave a little bit out of the kira, maybe a little bit was left, maybe not. It's also machlokes rishonim, but you rake most or all of the gecholim of the skulls, there's nothing for you to stoke, right? Or ktuma means they would cover it with ashes. When you cover it with ashes, even though it's still hot and still cooking, but it diminishes the heat, it's like a siman. It's like something symbolic to show that you are not interested. You're not so hot on having heat over here. You excuse the pun. You're like showing something that I'm mellowing, I'm mitigating a little bit the heat over here, I'm lowering it by putting the ktuma. It's actually they're covering the button, covering the fire. Cover the fire would be considered like ktuma. You cover the fire to show that it's a little bit less and it's not so much, I'm not so much in touch with the fire. Now it's very interesting. This is a very difficult piece what we just read. You know why? Because it sounds over here like the only game in town is Hanania. That's not true. There's an opinion later on in the Gemara. Big machlokes between Hanania and Chachamim. and between Rishonim and other Rishonim. Until today, it's Machlokes Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Machlokes Mechaber and Ramah. Yeah. And the Mechaber is more Machmir. The question is, do we say that being Ben Doso is enough? Or do we need, and that's opinion which is not mentioned in our Gemara, but is mentioned in Perek Shlishi, another opinion says it has to be fully cooked. If it's not fully cooked, we're still concerned you may come to cook it, to stoke, to try and go further. So how come over here we only mention Chananya? So the Rishonim, the Paskan like Chananya, they're having a field day. They say, look, the Gemara Paskan like Chananya, ignoring Chachamim. Tzitzit, enough to have Ben Dosai. And even though it's not fully cooked, no problem. Leave it on the fire. The other Rishonim say no. Only here, the Ran, Ramban, they say only here because here it's talking about solui, roasted. Something is roasted, it's straight on the fire. If you stoke it, it's going to ruin it because it's going to get too hot too quickly. It's going to burn it. That's why everybody agrees to Ben Dosai that we're less choishesh, we're less concerned. But when it comes to bishul or afia, when it's not direct fire, maybe then we pass like chachamim, you have to be fully cooked. Okay, weiter. En noisnin es hapas. So what did we say in the Mishnah? We said in the Mishnah, en noisnin es hapat. 1 second. Yeah. En noisnin es hapas. Iboilu. Now we said, what did we say in the Mishnah? According to Tanakama, en noisnin es hapas when? You don't put the pas, the bread, in the tanur unless it's crusty. And Rabbi Lezer said that only when it gets crusty, by, as Rabbi Lezer says, yikremu poneho. Yeah, what did Rabbi Lezer say? The tachtoin. Once the lower side of the bread is crusty, that's good enough. Now the question is, so before we continue, we have to understand that the pas has two sides to it. Yeah, the pas of the, the bread was stuck. Let's say my hand is the tanur, the inside of the tanur, the pot would be stuck to it. Yeah, let's say this disposable cup is the bread. This side faces the fire. The fire is inside. That side is stuck to the tanur. There are two sides. The tachtoin, the lower one, is facing the fire, the heat. The upper one is stuck to the tanur, to the actual side of the wall of the oven, usually made out of cheres, right? So now, really, as we're going to see, Rashi is going to tell us, what I'm going to tell you now, that the lower side, the tachtoin, is the one that bakes first. In other words, this could still be not crusty, it's still doughy, and this is already getting crusty, then the other side gets crusty, the upper one. That's the way it goes. And the inside, later. Inside may not be fully ready. That's all chiddush. And we already allow it to say the person is ready at ease. Let's see what the Gemara says. Iboilu. Now we have a question how to read the Mishnah. Which tachton are we talking about? Tachton is a hechtigabi tanu. Does tachton mean the one facing the tanu? And then Rabbi Lezer is mekel. If we say that Rabbi Lezer said the lower one means this one closer, excuse me. No, sorry. Mistake. Sorry. Do we say tachton the one by the tanu, which is the upper one? And if the upper one is crusty, ready, that kolshik and this one was already crusty before. So Rabbi Lezer is more machmir. Rabbi Lezer requires that both sides, all sides should be crusty, while Chachamim were the ones who said only half is enough. And his machmir says, no. You have to make sure both sides already are mukram, crusty, or dilma, tachton, or maybe the lower one means haich digabe'u. Maybe tachton means just the first one, the one facing the fire, that's the lower one, and that gets crusty first, and it's enough for that to be ready, even though that's still doughy, we're mekel, and Chachamim were the ones who were more machmir. Yeah, according to what Rabbi Lezer says, we know what Chachamim meant. Does Rabbi Lezer require the whole thing, or is it enough just to have the lower one? Doshma, Rabbi Lezer oimer kedei sheikrimu ponem udubokin batanu. Rabbi Lezer is more machmir, is machmir. Only once the face, the entire face, including the one stuck to the tanu, only once the entire thing is mukram, is crusty, both the lower one, the upper one, only then we say that the whole thing is crusty, and then you can go to shul, be okay, no problem, and there's no chashash, you'll come to stoke the fire. But Chachamim were more mekel, they said that only if the lower side it's already good enough. Halacha says that once, now the crusty here and there means, we don't know what's called crusty maybe, Once you cut the bread and it doesn't get, string, you don't have like the dough coming out like strings. The dough is like stable enough not to come out like stringy, yeah. Then it's already called okay in halacha. That's called both sides, like Rabbi Lezer. Right. What did we say? That when it comes to Pesach, the Korban Pesach, from some reason, all the rules change. And we say Mishalshel in Pesach, meaning that once they lower the Pesach, it's an entire animal, an entire keves, entire goat, entire lamb, and they put it in there. And once it starts baking, roasting, it's good enough. And we're not concerned they may come to play around and try and make it quicker by time. And why is that? Mishum the Bnei Chabura zrizin hen. The Bnei Chabura, people that get together to create Korban Pesach together, to work and eat the Korban Pesach together, they're zrizin. Zrizin means not only quick, like we say in Hebrew, zrizin, zrizus, alacrity. But zrizin also means chareidim ubnei Torah. There are people who are careful. People who deal with kochim are careful with what they do, and they will not come to actually do anything funny. The question is, of course, what do you mean? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, everybody would get together for Korban Pesach, not only Gdol Ador. The answer is, when it comes to Pesach, people are more careful. Even the less observant guy, yeah, the one who's just about Mesorti, even he, when it comes to Pesach, he'd be serious. Or the Sfas Emes says they would make sure there's one guy who knows what he's doing in the Chabura. Yeah, somebody that I know from Haifa, a person I know, she said her sister was niftar, so she was happy that one person there was religious, so he knew what to do at the Levi or whatever they want to have the in-house frumer to know what to do. The Bnei Chabur make sure at least somebody's knowledgeable, and he'll be mashgiach on them not to do anything wrong. Zog the Gemara halav achiloi. Wait a second. Are you telling me that otherwise no? If not for the svara of Bnei Chabur zrizin, won't you say that without that, isn't there another reason to say that to lower the Pesach, to put the Pesach in there is okay? The Omar Mar, we saw it. Oh, this is Chazara and stuff we did on Shabbos, each one alone. It says in the Gemara before that Gadya, if a person placed the baso of a gdi, an adult lamb, like a ram, like a big lamb or a gdi. No, it's not a lamb. It's a goat. Goat meat, goat meat is hard, and therefore ben sharik ben lo sharik shapir dami. What does it mean? The Gemara there in Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis discussed what would happen if a person places a piece of meat, a big piece of meat or pieces of meat that are of goat, which is hard meat, and maybe there's a chashash, and inside in a closed oven, and the question is, do we or don't we have a concern, the chashash, the person may open the oven, stoke the fire, and then remember it's Shabbos. You'll be so nervous. You said, no, because it's such, the Gadia is not tough. I'm sorry. No. The Gadia, the Gdi, is the tender meat. I'm sorry. It's tender meat, the Gdi. The Ayil is Barcha. This is one of the younger goat or the younger lamb, but then the meat is so delicate. I don't want to open the door of the oven, the side door, because then the wind would come in and ruin it. Ask your wives. Yeah, I always know in the middle of baking, you're not allowed to open the oven, right? Even if you're curious, because it ruins the whole thing, especially by cakes, right? Yeah, because then, not good for the food, clearly not good for Shalom Bayis, right? Shalom Bayis classier, right? And then what? And then what happens? Then we know that even if you didn't sharik, even if you didn't lock it, even if you didn't smear it with a sealant, even if you didn't, the mere fact that you don't want the wind to come in and hurt the tender meat, that alone is good enough. No. So l'choyer here mitzad Pesach, what do you have to tell me? Because Bnei Chabur is reason it's holy, it's a korban. No. Even if it was a bunch of pushtaka, bummy people not dealing with korban Pesach, they're still doing ala ish, they would still be careful. Why would they be careful? Stam, because it's going to ruin the meat. The same story yourself said. Answers the Gemara, no. Osam mintach, ochaloi mintach. Over there, the meat is cut into pieces. Normally, when you eat lamb, You don't put the entire lamb in the oven, excuse me. You cut it to pieces. Small pieces are more susceptible to be ruined, are more sensitive, right? And therefore, when it's your home kitchen, regular food, ala esh, and it's in the oven, just because it's tender and cut into pieces, the wind's going to ruin it. You're not going to risk it. You won't open the oven even to stoke because you want the tender meat to stay nice and good. But here it's an entire animal. It's not cut. It's whole. A whole piece of meat is strong and it will withstand the wind. The wind won't ruin it because it's very strong and it's one big piece. And therefore, if not for the reason of that they're dealing with holy things and they're careful about Shabbos, that otherwise it would have been a problem. The only reason why it's okay is because this is a heilig gezach and people treat it with a lot of zrizus and zehirus. And we're going to see, in a way, a little bit of a similar Gemara over here. We said that one is allowed to, in Beis HaMikdash, in the Beis HaMoiked, I like to call it the dorm of the Kohanim, although they didn't sleep, they actually slept there also. They would sleep there also, they would have a dargish, they would have like a shelf, a bunk bed, yeah, they would sleep on the clothes. How do you know that when it comes to Beis HaMoiked, you're allowed to light fire, even though the majority of the fire is not there yet? It didn't catch fire, and it's already okay. How do you know? How do you know? Amar Ravuna says, Ravuna, there's a source. It says, we saw it not that long ago at the end of Chumash Mois, Lo tevaru esh b'chol mashmoisechem. You're not allowed to light fire on Shabbos in any of your dwellings. What does it mean, any of your dwellings? You're not allowed to light fire in your house, in your shul, in your community center. You're allowed to light fire where? In Meduras Beis HaMoiked. Meaning, when it comes to Meduras Beis HaMoiked, Beis HaMikdash is not your home. Beis HaMikdash is Hashem's house. In Hashem's house, you're allowed to light fire in the Beis HaMoiked. Yeah. Frek the Gemara, you look surprised. Good. Frek the Gemara, Maskif lo Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda is attacking Rav Huna. If so, afilu b'Shabbos nami. Why you tell me I'm allowed to light it on Friday afternoon and I'm not concerned maybe I'll stoke it, light it on Shabbos. Go all the way. If you think really lighting fire in Beis HaMikdash is okay, even not for Korbanos, so go all 9 yards. So just allow 3 o'clock in the afternoon Shabbos, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, light the fire. And you don't say that. Ela Omar Rav Chizda, says Rav Chizda, no. Let's separate everything. The Pasuk talks about something else. Which means the pasuk that says that you're allowed to light fire in Beis HaMikdash, it's true. There is such a concept, but it's not a carte blanche to light fire in Beis HaMikdash. It means as follows. Ivorim updorim are the organs of the korban, the parts of meat of the korban. Pdorim are the fats of the korban. You tell me, what happens with the korban tomid shel ben arbaim? The afternoon tomid, when would they put on the mizbeach all the meat of that korban? All night long, till chatzos, night, the following night. Yeah, let's say you dalid odor korban, all the evorim, all the stuff of the, or from before, or stam korbanos during the day. They didn't have time during the day, all night long, or limited till chatzos at some point. They burn it on the mizbeach. Oh, here comes a big chiddush. Let's say you have Friday. You have Friday's korbanos, which belong to Friday, not to Shabbos. According to Rashi, this pasuk is telling me that you're allowed to burn the leftover meat from the Friday korban on Leil Shabbos, which some people like to call Friday night. Ooh, you see what's going on here? And that's allowed. Toyses asks on Rashi, Mapitom. Toyses says no. There's a Mufursh Gemara later on that says you're not allowed to. Answers Toyses. I'm reading it outside. Toyses says depends. If fire started catching onto the piece of meat, you're allowed to continue to burn it, even actively, to bring it onto the mizbeach further, stoke it in, bring it in. If the fire didn't yet start touching it, then you're not allowed to. There's a reason, Fred, that I saw, but I don't want to get too complicated here. That's the answer. Another pshat, my friends, is what happens if you have a korban on Shabbos and you want to korban tomid, musafim, tmidim. Now, you have the korban tomid, and you want to bring up the organs of the Mizbeach, and somebody will tell you, listen, maybe it's better to wait till Motzei Shabbos. No, because Motzei Shabbos, you're allowed to still bring, right? The following night, the night after, so maybe be a bit frumer, a bit more machmir. Don't burn it on Shabbos, because you can burn it later, Motzei Shabbos. The answer is no. It's better to burn it on Shabbos because the mitzvah on the Yom is B'Yom Matzah. It's better, says the Meiri, saw the Meiri today. It's better to do the mitzvah as soon as possible on the same day, not wait for the night. And if you're allowed to bring Korban Shabbos on Shabbos, then it's allowed, and that's what the Pasuk is telling me. Well, okay, thank you. But if everything you said is right, why is it really allowed, right? Why is it really okay for the Kohanim to start lighting the fire before Shabbos, right? Even though they come to stoke it on Shabbos. Because we said this Beis HaMikdash has nothing to do with the Pasuk. The Pasuk talks about the Mizbeach. The Pasuk talks about the actual, about the Korbanos themselves, not about Beis HaMikdash, which is the Kohanim's own need. So why is it allowed? And says the Gemara, the Kohanim Zrizin. Kohanim are Zrizin. What Kohanim Zrizin? Says Rashi, chareidim ubnei Torah. That's Lashon of Rashi. Yeah. Because the Kohanim were chareidim and bnei Torah, they were always very careful. They were always very knowledgeable. And therefore, they would not play around with the fire. A regular home, even if Kohanim, outside Beis HaMikdash, when they're not at work, Kohanim are Kohanim, people are people. In your own home, don't play with fire. Excuse the pun. Yeah. What do? Make sure that it's already mostly there, and then you can leave it before Shabbos. Don't start a small fire before Shabbos. You may come to stoke it, to make a big one. You're scared it's going to go out. The Shenken, Kohanim in Beis HaMikdash, they're on duty, they're chareidim, they're choshuv, they're not going to come to do it. They're not a sector in society in Beis HaMikdash would come to do it. Now, ubigvulin kedesh etachois ha'ur beruboy. Yeah. Who said begvulin outside Beis HaMikdash in your own house in Ramat Bet Shemesh? Let's say you have a fireplace. I guess some people in the neighborhood may have fireplaces. I don't know. I believe so. Could be. Yeah, made in America. Yeah. Let's say, guys, you have fireplace? No. In the US, you do. So now, let's say you have a fireplace. So you have to make sure that as Shabbos comes in, the majority of the fire already caught on to the wood. And the question is, my Ruben, what exactly do you call majority? Omar Rav, says Rav, Roiv kol echad ve'echad. Yes, each and every wood, let's say you have 10 pieces of wood in the fireplace, make sure, not the majority of each and every wood that you use, its majority has to be lit. 60% of number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, each and every one, all of it, kol echad ve'echad. Only then we say you're not going to play around on Shabbos. Shmuel says no. Says Shmuel, no. When we say roiv, we don't mean to say majority, we mean to say a lot. If the fire is such where people don't tell each other, let's bring more firewood underneath, you know how the fire starts, right? You have the big woods. Anybody who ever did like bomber knows that. You need small wood or paper, you need something smaller to start catching the fire. Once you don't say to your friend, hey, let's bring more stuff to start fire, or to make sure it grows, then it's already enough. Shmuel leaves it up to us, more or less. And Shmuel says it doesn't have to be mamash roiv, it has to be harbe, like a lot. It has to be already seriously on the go, even though it's not 60%. Maybe it's only 40%. But as long as people are not worried anymore, that's enough. Tani Reb Chia l'Siyah l'Shmuel. Reb Chia brings a statement to help Shmuel's opinion that once your mind is at rest, Allah is okay with that too. He says about the menorah. We're going to see it actually in 2 days' time from today, if all goes well, Be'ezras Hashem. It says about the menorah in Beis HaMikdash, Ba'alois chos anerois. So what does it mean? How much time does the Kohen have to be there while he lights the candles of the menorah in Beis HaMikdash? Which means the Kohen who stands there with the, let's say, not a match, with a stick in his hand with fire, how is it enough to just start lighting 1 to 7 and go? Does he have to make sure that the majority of the flame is already on, or all of it? How long does he have to stay there? The rule is without dover acher. Once the Kohen feels in his own mind that the Shalheves, what's the Shalheves? Flame. Once he knows that the flame will already go up by itself, in other words, 30, 40%, once he has a feeling that this is enough and the flame doesn't need any more, chizuk, any more, perpetuating, it's enough. That's called already lit. What does it have to do with us? Nothing much, true. There we're talking about the menorah. Here we're talking about lighting your fire before Shabbos. But the common denominator is that halacha views something as lit. In the eyes of halacha, something is called fully lit once you are not worried about it anymore. Kol shekin over here, when it is about human mind, once you feel this fire is good enough, I'm not going to play with it because I know that on a weekday I wouldn't start bringing more fire or more tapers or more gasoline. I don't need anymore, right? At that point, it's called lit, and halacha is fine if you're fine. Etz yechidi. Oh, here comes a question. What about if you have one big log of wood? You have one log of wood. There's no roiv, but the log of wood, because up until now, Rav said, if you have many of them, each and every one has to have the majority lit, right? What would we say about one piece of wood? What would you say there? Imagine yourself. This is a piece of wood, right? Look, yeah, it's round. Yeah, it has a circumference and it has the inside. This is a cut wood. Yeah, this is the face of the wood, so to speak. It's all around and the middle. Rav Omar Roiv Ovyoy. Rav says the majority of the thickness. Once I see fire, yeah, let's say this is 60%. Once majority of the entire wood looking from the inside is lit, only then you can go to shul and it's all fine. You don't have to put it out or make sure anything happens. It's good. You can leave it like that for Shabbos. You won't play around with it. Only with the majority of the actual wood, the inside. Oh, other people say, possibly in the name of Rav, and they say Rov Hekefo, the majority of the circumference. Once we don't care about the inside, once the majority of the outside is lit, yeah, like a ring of fire, like in the circus, yeah, you have majority of it lit, that's good enough. Even on both sides, half here, 30% here, would also be once majority of the outside is on fire, your mistami, your mind is at rest, go, it's fine, it will continue, you can leave it like that. Omar Apope, Hilkach, therefore Apope is being machmir both ways. Let's be machmir both ways. You have to have the majority of the outside and the majority of the inside. You need both. Yeah, let's say here it's only 60%. There, no. Here you need roiv of the hekif also, which is more. You need both. Now, ketanoi, but really those two opinions, both seemingly on B'Shem Rav, are really two opinions of the Tanoim. In other, B'chia says you needed mamish, it should be destroyed, that an uman, a carpenter, won't be able to work with it. And then is the majority of the thickness. Yeah, because then he could peel the uman. Once it's really 60%, the whole thing. Only then it's okay. Rabbi Yehuda Besera argues, no, it has to be such a situation that the fire holds on both sides of the tzadin, on both sides of the outside. It's extinguished. The majority of the rind of the outside is lit. And there is, although there's no proof for that, there's a zecher. There's some kind of mentioning a hint to that in the pasuk. It says, let's say both sides of the wood are eaten by fire. Yeah, the inside nichar. In other words, nicha means dry. Once dried and left, the original wetness of the moist of the tree is gone already. It's already all crackling. It's all dried. The fire took out any goodness from it. Yeah, the inside is nicha. Hitzlach lemalacha. Can you do anything with it? Which means that if both sides of the majority of the circumference is already on fire, that means the inside already is really out. You can put it out, but otherwise, if you don't, it's on its way out, and you know that too. And therefore, if that's your situation, Erev Shabbos, it's no problem. It's already lit enough for you to be calm You're not going to stoke the fire. We're not going to finish Dhamma today, but just one more. V'ha'ach lefonov meva'eres. Yeah, this story is about Yoakim. Yoakim, they gave Yoakim a very nice copy of Megillas Eicha. Yoakim, who lived right before the Churban, he didn't like Megillas Eicha. So what did he do? He threw it into the fire. That's the solution. So he threw unfortunately, he threw that into the fire. And how is the fire called? Ach. We Israelis know, you know what's an ach in Hebrew? What's ach? Fireplace. An ach is the fireplace. But now the Gemara is debating what is an ach. My ach, why is ach called ach, and what does it mean? Omar Rav achvano. Achvano means arova, like the arova or the poplar tree, tzafzefa. A tree which is as dry, that's a very, very flammable tree. It's very flammable. It lights very quickly. The Sfasemis says because he was a king, they would place in front of him the fire he had was fire that was made out of those poplar trees or arovos, because they would light very quickly, so the king has his fire straight away. And so that was the kind of fire which we're not worried about. Arova, according to that, you can start the fire with arova and go to shul, no problem. You know that it's going to light very quickly. I'm not saying Allah Lamaisa, but that's what he said. Shmuel Omar, etzim shenidleku be'achvano. Shmuel says, no, these are pieces of wood which are like brothers to each other, which means that there are many, like a fireplace, there are many of them together. The small one lights the big one. Many trees together, many pieces of wood together, many logs, small, big twigs, all of them together, they all light each other like brothers. Ach. That's really the meaning of the word ach. They're all like brothers, all the different pieces of wood, they light each other up. Ahud Omer Lehu, and here comes kind of a proof for that. There was once a man who told people, Man buy achvana. Maybe he was a merchant, and he told people, who wants to buy achvana? Ishtakach arvoso. Oh, and really it was an arava. He was selling aravos, maybe for a sukkah. Yeah, so you see, like Rav, that says that ach or achvana means the arava. Okay, very good. Or maybe just a translation. Maybe it's not supporting Rav, but that's whatever. That's what we say. I'm not going to continue now because it's time. Okay, so we didn't finish Talmud, but we did the Mishnah. So tomorrow, remember Amar of Huna. And in Hashem, we'll start a new perek by Memat Likin. Atzlacho Vracha, may we always be lit only with the fire of Torah. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who watches us on YouTube as well.